Hi, this is Rabbi Chaim Kaufman. Welcome to our 232nd installment of the Torah portion of the week. We are holding by Parshas Ve'eschanan, another packed parsha. The parsha speaks about the fact that Moshe wanted praise and praise and praise to get into the promised land, to want to get into Israel. We hear about the decrees and the ordinances. We speak about the fact that Moshe is not going to be allowed in the land. We speak about cities of refuge, 10 Commandments. Speak about the Shema. There's a lot, certainly a lot here to speak about. Torah tells me, chapter 5, verse 18. Torah says, you shall not covet your fellow's wife, shall not desire your fellow's house, his field, his slave, his maidservant, his ox, donkey, or anything that belongs to your fellow. Now here, at the beginning, it says you should not desire, you really should not covet your fellow's wife, right? Obviously, you're not allowed, certainly to commit adultery, but at the same time, you're not even allowed to desire, right? It says you should not desire your fellow's house, anything your fellow has, right? Anything your friend has, his field, his house, his slave, maidservant, and all that. Now, there's an obvious question that needs to be addressed, and that is, the Torah tells me, lo tesaveh, do not desire. Isn't it true? Everybody has desires. We all have desires. Some are good desires, some are bad desires. Right? A person can want to do the right thing, can want to go in the right path. We can certainly want to do Ratzon Hashem, to do God's will. That's good. On the other hand, we can have bad desires. Torah tells me in the Shema, I'm not allowed, the third paragraph of the Shema, I'm not allowed to go after my heart and after my eyes. Right? I can't go after what I see, but I also have to be careful with what I think. This applies to men, applies to women. A man can have dreams at night, a woman can have dreams at night. So why do we distinguish? Why do we say it's only a man's problem? It's not a man's problem, even if he doesn't act on it. Right? It's also a woman's problem. Regardless. So the Torah here, though, says, you shall not desire. So, who doesn't have desires? Again, even if they're good desires, it doesn't necessarily have to be bad. Right? When we talk about desire, in general, what are we talking about? Bad. Right? Bad desires. Bad thoughts. Now, let's clarify. If it's something that's random, something just pops into a person's mind, they fight like a dog to get rid of it, good. But if a person thinks about it, and they think about it, that's forbidden. Even to the extent where, let's say a person thinks about their spouse. Right? Now, if the spouse is permissible, so you say nothing wrong with it. Right? You're not thinking about other women or other men. So therefore, it's okay. Right? It should be okay. What's the problem? Even if it's permissible, still not allowed to. Only at the time where you're going to be together. But before that, it should be forbidden. So someone's going to say, well, I understand if they're permitted to me. So, why can't, a person enjoy as much as they want? So the answer is, a person's not allowed to be with their spouse like a chicken. It's permissible. So, just because it's permissible, doesn't mean I'm allowed to do it every second. We certainly know by men that it's a tremendous power. And the more they do it, the weaker they get. Right? It weakens them. Right? I don't think it stops too many people. Regardless, we're going to keep this PG-13. Right? Regardless, person has one of the greatest desires ever given a man. And what does God tell him? Harness it. Use it for the right purpose. Don't let it run wild. Now, even for a non-Jew. Right? For a non-Jew, we'd say, well, doesn't really apply to them. They can do as much as they want. But the reality is, it should be a moral imperative. Why should it be a moral imperative? Because a non-Jew has to keep that which makes sense according to the Torah. So if it makes sense, now the question is, does this make sense? Now women should be nodding their heads, this makes sense. Why does this make sense? Because a woman does not want to be objectified. Even though the secular world is all about objectifying women. Oh, you're a sexist, a chauvinist. Nothing to do with being a chauvinist. Look at the billboards. Look at what they're selling on TV. Commercials. Magazines. Women are being objectified. So people may say, oh, the laws of modesty, amongst the Jewish people, it's backwards. Why shouldn't men and women go to the beach together? What are you, prude? Nothing to do with being prude. It's respecting the other sex. So a person's going to say, well, if you get excited, something wrong with you. Just the opposite. If you don't and you repress it, definitely something wrong with you. Most powerful urge given to men. So it has to be used in the right way. When it's used in the right way, it's a holy thing. When it's used in the wrong way, it's not harnessed properly. What is it? It's being like animals. Only difference is animals aren't embarrassed doing public. Mankind may be a little bit embarrassed sometimes. So what differentiates us between us and animals? God gave the spirit of life. Put in every person. What's the spirit of life called? The Ruach Memalelo. Ability to speak, to reason, make decisions. If we just act like animals, do whatever animals do, that is part of us. We have that animalistic soul. But it can get abused. So women will be saying, yeah, makes a lot of sense. We're going to be treated like women. Not like objects. True? Definitely should be done. So even a non-Jew, they may say, you know what, that's the way of the world. They objectify women. Doesn't mean it's right. So for guys, that's a natural inclination. Women can also have the inclination. That's why it's forbidden for them as well. Even though it's really the way of men to conquer, i.e. to entice. You can say women do the same. Not the same. They can't. But again, really it's the man chasing the woman, not normally the other way around. But people say times have changed. Women are different today. True? Certainly in the secular world, that may be true. In some ways. But the point is, desire, like any other thing, has to be used in the right way. So someone will say, come on, that's repression. That's repressing the natural. For the natural feelings. How can you do that? It'll come out in a negative way, other ways. reality is, when a person treats a member of the opposite sex like a person, then the relationship flourishes. Or should flourish. Because you can't always be together. Right? A non-Jew different, but for a Jew, can't always be together. Right? A few weeks out of a month, can't be together. So what's the husband going to do? Just ignore his wife? That's what it means to have a relationship. There's a difference between love. As Rav Noah Weinberg of blessed memory, the head of Torah, founder of the Yeshiva Torah, would say it's the difference between love and infatuation. What's infatuation based on? Looks, desires, things that are fleeting. Because what happens when those things disappear? Woman gets older, no plastic surgery, doesn't look as good. So what do? Exchange her. Maybe. Well, you can't do that. I mean, you could in theory. Right? You get divorced, marry someone else. But obviously it doesn't work. Because then you get tired of that person also. We live in a world of fantasy. And it may be fun, may be enjoyable, but it's fantasy. So we have to understand. We have to know how to look at the world. Certainly through the eyes of the Torah. Now a non-Jew will say, okay, this doesn't apply to me. But the reality is, why not? Isn't it a good thing to curb your appetite? Work on yourself? Treat the opposite sex like a person, not like an object. Makes sense. Right, but this is the way of the world. This is what the world does. That's why it wouldn't necessarily apply to them. But it makes sense. But it goes both ways. See, a person shouldn't think, oh, it's only bad for the men. You're right, it's bad for men. It's also bad for women. And the reason the Torah has limits in many areas of our lives, say, oh, it's so controlling. Well, let's look what's behind it before we say what it is. Don't the rabbis understand? Don't they understand, the drives of a person? True. Certainly understand. Do they say you're allowed to use it? 100%. When it's permissible. Within reason. The problem is, in today's society, and from years ago, not just today, why do I have to harness anything? Why should anything be forbidden? Why can't I just do what I want? Because it turns out you can't. Give an example. Many years ago, my kids were younger. So, when they were very young, we made them wait between meat and milk. Normally wait 6 hours. Made them wait when they were very young, let's say an hour. Depending on the age. Maybe a couple hours. And someone said, well, that's cruel. How can you make a child suffer like that? Because you're teaching them a lesson. You can't just do whatever you want, when you want. Right? Remember that song? Can't always get what you want. Can't. There are limits, which no one wants to hear. There are limits to what I can do. It's not a Hefka world. Not a world. It's not an ownerless world. I can do whatever I want, when I want. That's how people want to live their lives. Fame! I'm gonna live forever. That's what people want. They do whatever they want, when they want. God forbid you should say, come on. What are you doing? Shouldn't be doing this. Shouldn't be carried away. They'll say, mind your own business. Live and let live. There's a problem. Because you got to take responsibility. Responsibility means I have to do what God says. I can't just do whatever I want. In a hedonistic world, can't say that. Can't say anything's forbidden. To each their own. So then the question is there a higher authority? Is there right and wrong? They'll say, I'm a moral person. Okay. You ever cheat on your taxes? You ever lie to someone? How many questions can we ask to see if you're really moral? Some more, some less. But what defines morality? What I think? What's going on in everyday life? What the people do? Or do we have to answer to a higher authority? And if we have to answer to a higher authority, we have to know what the higher authority says. It comes on the Torah over here, and the Torah says, don't desire your fellow's house, his fields, his slave. Even if you don't take it, you don't make him an offer, let's say on his house. You can't even want his house. Because if I desire it, I could do something underhand to try and get it. Who says I have to keep up with the Joneses and do what everyone else is doing? But how do we fight it? We spoke about why it's bad in general. But if we all have natural desires, so you're going to say it's part of my psyche, it's who I am. What, do you expect me to fight myself? So what's the obvious answer? We do. We've spoken before. The mind-heart disconnect. Now, the mind should tell us, thinking about the opposite sex, even when, let's say, our spouses are permissible to us, the mind may say, well, maybe I shouldn't feed that. I shouldn't have those thoughts. So if you focus on them, even if you don't act on it, it's still forbidden. Because it's a cycle. So you're going to say, what, I have to suppress everything? No. We're not Christians. Right? The idea is to harness it. To use it right. Does the evil inclination let up on us? No. Makes its life a living misery. Person can have all these desires all day long. Right? Even things that are forbidden. All day long, all week long. The more you think about it, the more you feed into it, harder to fight against. But if we're talking to the heart goes crazy. A person wants his fill, wants to enjoy. They're not necessarily thinking about repercussions. They may be unhappy. They may look other places for things. That means they have to work on themselves. You say, that's against the rules. It's against the rules. We have to be careful. We have to think proper thoughts. See proper things. We have to focus on that. Problem is, life gets in the way. Makes it real hard. We're down, we're depressed. This happened, that happened, something else happened. We give in to our desires, which is exactly what God doesn't want. So you say, but I'm only human. You're right. But if a person gives up before they start, they don't have a chance. And there are people who would say that's not a value. What? To work on yourself, curb your most basic desires? That's what I should be doing. And what's their answer going to be? I want to have fun. I want to enjoy life. This doesn't seem like enjoying life. So according to them, what is enjoying life? Enjoying life is equal to acting like an animal. That's what it is. Speech, food, drink, immorality. Fill in the blank. Doesn't make me a better person. You may fulfill certain desires, okay? Does that make me more moral? So what's immoral about it? Right? It's like someone will say, if a person's married, a woman gets her period, say, you can't be with her for a couple weeks. They say, but it's natural. Right? The natural flow. True. Just because it's the natural flow, it's the way of women in general. So you're going to say, well, okay, I can still do whatever I want. Just because it's natural, quote unquote, in science, so what? God said, stay away at that time. Doesn't mean you ignore them. Right? But you can't be that way with them. We got to control our appetite. That's what we have to do. Like a person's on a diet. How do you stay on a diet? You don't eat between meals. You don't eat when you're not hungry just because you're bored. If a person wouldn't snack, they wouldn't be overweight in general. Even if you get a lot of exercise. It's curbing the appetite. It's knowing what to do, putting that part of my psyche and actually going out and doing it. Because if I just say, woe to me, what can I do? That's the way it is. Too bad. Work on it. Person gives up before they start, it's over. There's no possible way. So what do we see from here? Desire is a natural thing. Common thing. The way of the world. And God says, you know what? As it says over here as well, you don't like everybody else, the Jewish people. You stand out amongst the people. Why? Because I gave you a Torah. Not just because you're a Jew. I gave you the Torah to work on yourself. To go against the norm. Because we don't care what the norm is. It's irrelevant what's going on in the world. We have to do what the Torah says. That's it. You like it, you don't like it, too bad. That's what you got to keep. But we're trying to understand why just giving in to your base desire when you want is okay. Even if it doesn't hurt anyone. But it does. It hurts the person who does it. Why does it hurt the person who does it? Because they're making it that much harder to be better. To be closer to God. When you give in to that inclination and it runs wild, that's exactly what happens. It runs wild. That we can't have. Because then it's uncontrollable. And once it's uncontrollable, how do you fight it? It's already part of our psyche. Right? It's already part of our psyche. So we have to take it out of our psyche. We have to work hard against it. To get rid of these thoughts. Even if we have them. Get rid of them straight away. Don't focus on it. Because if you focus on it and say, woe to me, I failed again, I failed again, I failed again. Okay? You got to brush yourself off and start again. But essentially, I'm in this world to work. I'm in this world to toil. I'm in this world even to control my mind. It can be done. It's not impossible. Regardless of what we think. We can choose to be in a good mood or a bad mood. You say, come on, chemical imbalance, different things. We can accomplish a lot of things. But you're not going to accomplish it without hard work. And the problem is, in this world, nobody wants to work hard. They want everything to be easy. Everything to go smooth. You don't have to give in to anything. I'll eat what I want. I'll do what I want. So there's a law. There's a law in the books called Yesh Din V'Yesh Dayan. There's a judgment. There's a judge. And we're going to have to pay. Whether in this world, the next world, or both. So if we'd learn to take our desires and use them in the right way, we have a chance. If I just give in to them and I feed into them, you don't have a chance. So we want to struggle, we want to toil, we want to go in the right direction. That's going to make us into the great people we can be. That's going to help us reach our potential. I want to remind everyone every Tuesday, I give a class on duties of the heart, 9 o'clock Eastern Time. And we are in the gate of self-accounting. I have 2 Q&As every Tuesday and Thursday, 10 o'clock Eastern Time, 5 o'clock Israel Time. Sunday, 9 o'clock Eastern Time, Book of Leviticus, chapter 14. Monday, 2 o'clock Eastern Time, 9 o'clock Israel Time, the controversial issues on Tanakh Talk. Saturday, 2:30 in the afternoon, Eastern Time, 9:30 Israel Time. After Shabbos is Pirkei Avos, Ethics for Our Fathers. I have conversion classes. Anyone interested in any of this, find me on Facebook, Beyond Orthodox Conversion to Judaism. You can send me an email, rabbichaimkoffman@gmail.com, RABBICHAIMCOFFMAN @gmail.com.